What's going on, everybody? I'm Max Ralph.
Seth Engle.
We are coming at you live. Some rebranding this week. We are now going to be called the 1-0 podcast. Say goodbye to the lengthy Collegian football podcast name. 1-0. Got that mentality, just like James would like. Anyway, big recruiting weekend just happened, but that's not what we're going to talk about in this one. Stay tuned. More's coming on that. Interesting news this week. New numbers for all the recruits and the new enrollees at Penn State. The interesting one to me, new numbers are fun, but not all that important. Interesting one, Abdul Carter got number 11. It's kind of like a huge vote of confidence in a kid who hasn't even seen the field yet. Seth and I were just talking about it. Number 11 is obviously a pretty big tradition at Penn State now. Micah Parsons, LeVar Arrington, Navarro Bowman, Brandon Bell. But when most of them had it, it wasn't really a thing. Like Stick City, which Micah calls it nowadays, wasn't really a tradition. Brandon Bell started with number 26 and switched to 11. But once Micah had it, like it was the thing. And so now it's really interesting to me that the staff is just like all in, giving it to Abdul Carter, because like I think that's number one. I think that's a challenge for him. And I think number two, that's an extreme vote of confidence for like the prime linebacker piece in this 2022 class. But that's my thoughts on that, Seth. I don't know what your reaction was to it.
Well, I wonder like what goes into making someone number 11. If it's more so him coming forward and being like, okay, I want to rep the sticks, or if it's more so the team being like, okay, you're a local guy. Micah just had it, local guy. We think that you would best embody the number 11. That's what I was wondering, especially because there are other linebackers in the class. Like,
right.
Were there other people who wanted the number? Like,
I remember Ken Talley a couple of times tweeted something about wanting to be the next number 11. So that's kind of interesting too.
Well, that's the first thing I thought. And he hasn't even moved in yet. So maybe that's another thing. Maybe Abdul just got there first.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's some beef now.
maybe not.
Probably not.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I mean, just like coming in as a true freshman. And we already know Abdul Carter is likely to get, playing time this year.
Yeah.
It's just what the coaches have told us thus far. He's someone that's really excited them. So it's probably something where it was like kind of went both ways. He was probably like, I'll rep it. And then they're like, okay, we're cool with that.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. But you mentioned he's somebody who the staff has already said is probably going to see the field. We actually had an interesting conversation with James Franklin. What was that, 2 weeks ago now? When Abdul Carter's name came up, and they said they were kind of in a bit of a middle ground, trying to decide if they wanted him to come in and play Mike right away, or if they wanted to make him play that Will, the field backer, which is what often happens at Penn State with young linebackers. So interesting. A big piece of their future for sure, but that's a good segue into what we're actually going to talk about today. For the most part, the bulk of this podcast, guys who aren't getting talked about enough heading into this season. And it feels weird to start off with this name, but another linebacker, Curtis Jacobs, is kind of quiet, at least outside of the realm of Happy Valley. I think everybody at Penn State, every Penn State fan knows that this kid's a dog, but like we're talking mock drafts and that kind of stuff. Seth, we both feel that he's just like it's kind of baffling why he's not getting talked about as much as he is.
Yeah, I mean, no disrespect to Joey Porter Jr., who I think like has the potential to be a great NFL player. He's just got to work on some things. But I mean, Curtis Jacobs is probably outside of PJ Mustipher, maybe the best player on that defense. And I don't know why, but like you will scroll through big boards, you'll scroll through mock drafts, and you just won't see his name, which is really like questionable, especially just based on the fact that he was incredible last year as a sophomore.
A true sophomore.
Yeah. So, I mean, he stepped into like a crazy role last year. And I mean, another thing is that Brandon Smith was, getting discussed as maybe a late first round, second round pick at the start of last year. But Curtis Jacobs is already so much more advanced than Brandon Smith was after 2 seasons.
Yeah. You kind of still.
Why is he getting that same love? Maybe size. He's 6'1", 227. A little small, but like guy's a hard hitter.
Yeah.
He plays bigger than he actually is. So
you stole the words right out of my mouth with the Brandon Smith thing. I mean, I think part of what worked in Smith's favor was, like you mentioned, the size. I mean, he has some physical attributes that are uncommon, to say the least. But the things that he put on tape were the concerning parts that made him fall to the fourth round. The pursuit angles and everything. And that was stuff that we saw last year before heading into the season. And so he was getting those high mock drafts because he had the measurables. But then once we got to the season and he was still showing that, the pursuit angles and everything were still a little bit rough around the edges, that he was going to need some help when he got to the NFL. I think that's why he fell. Curtis Jacobs is kind of the exact opposite. Like he is impressive to watch. Pass rush, covering in the flats. Like he's an athletic monster, just like in a smaller size. And so I really don't understand why, like you said, he's not getting that love that Brandon Smith was, because it's almost like if this was a scale where on one side you've got athletic attributes and like tape, like Brandon Smith is this, Curtis Jacobs is this. They even out. And so I think they should be getting the same love. And yeah, it doesn't make sense. And I want to touch on Joey Porter Jr. as well, just because his name came up. I think that's kind of a similar case to Brandon Smith, actually. Like I don't know if you feel that way too, but he's got insane measurables for a corner. I mean, you just look at him and he almost looks like he could play linebacker in the NFL. Just some of the pass interferences is really what we're looking for there. He got penalized a lot last season, and I think that's something that he'll clean up. And I do think he can live up to that first, second round mock draft. But yeah, Curtis Jacobs, I don't get it.
Yeah, no, I'm hoping that like after a year, I think it has to be the size, because it was the same thing with Ellis Brooks, where I was really questioning like, okay, this guy is absolutely a demon, like just by watching him. Like he is. This guy is
dude.
Crazy.
Yeah. Like what he lacks in speed, he makes up for in football IQ and just brute strength. I mean, that dude could plug a gap.
Yeah, but Curtis Jacobs is already miles ahead of Ellis Brooks. So, we'll have to see this year. Some other guys, I think there's some guys that just came in, some true freshmen, not going to play a ton, but I still think aren't being talked about enough. I want to talk about quarterbacks real quick. Obviously Drew Aller, talk of the town coming in,
sure,
4-5-star. Bo Prabula, in my opinion, he's probably ahead of him in the depth chart right now, and I don't think people really realize that. We saw both play in the blue and white game, like really wasn't a competition who was better. Aller threw 2 picks in like 3 attempts.
I mean, cut up some slack. Like one of them was tipped, but yeah, I mean, it is what it is, and it's still they played 7-on-7. But no, I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's just side by side from what we've seen so far. It's really just not a question. And I mean, I can't speak for how the coaches are seeing it right now. And we also haven't seen Aller in a couple months. But I think Bo Prabula right now is probably ahead of him in that depth chart.
Yeah, it's hard to say, like you said, when we haven't seen them like actually do things in a while. But at the conclusion of spring practice, watching the blue-white game, Bo Prabula looked like he was ahead. And it's not saying a whole lot, small sample size, and especially because they're young. Like they haven't thrown passes in a game yet. That was their first couple of months on campus. So it's easy for one guy to stand out a little bit if they're just a little more mature. Like the measurables are all there for Drew as well. And the arm strength is raw. Like it's early to say it, but I think the point of why we're bringing this up is that like everybody's so excited about Drew Aller. It might be time to like understand that they might have gotten 2 really stinging good quarterbacks in this class.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And then another thing too, another freshman. I mean, you talk about Kaden Saunders, who's far and away, at least by rankings, the number 1 wide receiver in Penn State's class this year. But a guy who's been generating a lot of buzz lately has been Amari Evans.
Yeah. I mean, This he kind of blipped on my radar because I saw his name come up on Twitter a handful of times, and like people talk about Kaden, like you said, and a lot of the talk in the Penn State wide receiver room is Mitchell Tinsley, Parker Washington, obviously. Omari Evans might not see the field a ton this year, but like we've talked to Taylor Stubblefield about him a number of times, and those conversations, like Stubblefield gets excited. Like he just talks about how the speed is just elite for Omari Evans, and I think that's a situation where even if Evans doesn't get a ton of playing time at the start of the year, that's something Penn State could really use. Like I don't want to throw out comparisons right away because like we haven't even seen Omari on the field really, but like they haven't had pure speed out of the receiver position since like KJ Hamler. And obviously we know how much of a game changer KJ was. Like if that speed is true, like if that's like Keandre Lambert Smith said it, Taylor Stubblefield said it, if that's there, like that's a game changer for Penn State.
Yeah. I mean, we saw a lack of explosive plays last year. And a big reason for that was that lack of speed. Jahan Dotson, as great as he is, he's not the fastest guy in the world.
No. He's explosive out of his routes, but like top end speed, it's not the same as KJ or other guys that Penn State has had.
Sure. And Amari Evans too. I mean, we might not see him as receiver too much his true freshman year, but on special teams, I mean, Drew Hartman's gone. They need a gunner right now. They need a gunner. They need a guy with like 4.2, 4.3 speed right now. And he might be young, but I mean, if he has that speed, if he's the fastest guy on the team,
right? Yeah, exactly.
Probably going to put him in that position.
Yeah, I mean, and to piggyback off that, they lost Drew Hartlaw, but they lost AJ Litton too. They lost both of their gunners.
Second fastest guy on the team.
Right, exactly. So no, Omari Evans is gonna like out of everything that we've heard and seen, like that's a name to watch that I don't see a ton of like talk about from Penn State fans and everything. Like special teams, and even we've seen him return a few punts and kicks in practice. Him and Kaden Saunders. I've seen both of them return some kicks in practice, and I just think it's really interesting that he's not getting talked about a whole lot. But
I think there's a reason for it too. I've talked to Amari. I talked to him, and he had just committed. He's a quiet kid.
Yeah.
And Kaden Saunders, from what you see on social media,
sure.
The opposite. Like if you're a Penn State fan who's active on social media, you know who Kaden Saunders is.
Yeah.
You might not know who Amari Evans is because he hasn't told you who he is yet. But you'll know. You'll know eventually when he's running sub 4.3s. Right. He's potentially the starting gunner.
Yeah. I can see it happening for sure. A couple of just to wrap things up here with those roster updates we saw with the new numbers, a couple of new move-ins for Penn State, Mekhi Flowers and Christian Driver. I don't really think either of these things are surprises, but we've got confirmation on what position they're at least going to start at Penn State. Each of them, Flowers and Driver, both played both sides of the ball in high school, both played receiver and defensive back. But now they're on the roster. They're listed with their numbers. Both are on the defense. Flowers at safety, Driver at cornerback. I don't know, Seth, how do you think that kind of sets them up for the future?
Well, I thought it was especially cool with Christian Driver because he's had a really weird roller coaster of like conversations with the coaching staff where they're like, okay, we want you to play defensive back. He's like, I kind of want to play wide receiver, changes his mind, calls him back. He's like, I'll play wherever you want me to play. And then we were talking to Terry Smith a few months ago. I think it was on signing day. And he explains that whole thing. And, they talked about like playing him at safety, also playing him at corner a little bit. And you fast forward to now and you see him at corner, which wasn't really expected to be his primary position. It was expected to be safety. So now he's playing corner, which is interesting because it's like not really like what he was recruited as whatsoever as a wide receiver and safety. Yeah. So that kind of shows his versatility. And I just thought that was interesting. And then Mekhi Flowers, he great safety in high school.
Really good ball hawk.
Yeah. He, also a great wide receiver too. So that could be pretty valuable in the special teams.
Yeah. I just want to hit on Driver real quick. the measurables are really good on him. Like a lot of the guys that Penn State's brought in, of course, but the measurables are really good. And we just kind of talked about Joey Porter, but it could be a big deal to have him learn that corner spot early, because next year, like if we're like, it's way too early to talk about 2023, but if we're going to talk about it, the corner spot's pretty light because Joey Porter Jr.'s almost guaranteed going to be on his way out. I mean, he technically has more eligibility, but he's going to be gone. And Johnny Dixon, who's probably going to be the third corner this year, I believe, is going to be gone as well. So
as well will probably be gone.
Yeah, so it's interesting, but if you look at that corner designation for Driver, then you look at the measurables, he might be a guy we're going to talk about in the same form that we are right now on guys who aren't getting talked about enough, because he could be in that spot, but that's way too early. And I think our biggest point here was stock for Curtis Jacobs should be skyrocketing. That like 100% is the bottom line.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Remember, rebrand 1-0 podcast. Follow along with us on Twitter at PSU Footblog and online at collegian.psu.edu. Peace.